This happened on July 4th, 2021. I live in rural Indiana. Flat land, endless rows of cornfields, and neighborhoods so spread out that your nearest neighbor might be a quarter mile down the road. It's the kind of place where nothing ever really happens, until it does. At the time, I was 26 and still living at home, mostly for financial reasons. Not exactly ideal, but I had made peace with it. Things were quiet, predictable. That night, my friend Justin invited me over to his uncle's property for a backyard cookout and fireworks. Nothing fancy, just a few families, burgers sizzling on the grill, folding tables with mismatched lawn chairs, and plenty of cheap beer. The usual. Justin's uncle lived on a big plot of land with massive cornfields stretching behind the house. They cut a narrow path straight through it, so we could set up a launch zone deeper in, far enough away from the house to shoot off mortars without scaring the dogs or burning something down. It's the kind of gathering I'd been to 100 times. We headed down the cornfield path just after 9 p.m. when the sky was still holding on to the last bit of twilight. On both sides of us, the corn towered overhead, swaying slightly in the breeze. Justin carried the folding chairs, and I had a small cooler. Kids chased each other with glow sticks, and someone hooked up a Bluetooth speaker playing a 4th of July playlist, the kind with country music, classic rock, and the occasional 90s banger. It should have been perfect. Before I get any deeper, if you like real, creepy stories like this one, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe. It helps more than you think, and there's more where this came from. So, we get everything set up in the small clearing carved into the corn. The adults are sitting around with beers. The kids are lighting sparklers, and the first few fireworks go up. Those cheap ones that crackle and pop. You know the type. But maybe 20 minutes in, I noticed something was off. Justin leaned over and said quietly, "Weird. The moon's out, but it feels darker than usual." He was right. Despite the mostly clear sky, the corn around us looked almost black, like it was absorbing the light. And the breeze? Gone. The stalks were completely still. No rustling. No bugs. Not even the buzzing of mosquitoes or a chirp of a cricket. Just silence and the occasional boom of a firework echoing through the dark. I laughed it off at first, but I kept glancing at the corn. That watch feeling started creeping in. You know the one. Not like someone is glancing at you from across a party, but the kind of feeling that makes your skin crawl and your chest tighten. That old primal fear. Something isn't right. Then, around 10:15, someone set off a mortar, one of the big ones. For a second, it lit up the whole field like daylight. And that's when I saw it. About 30 feet away, deep in the corn, a figure. It looked like a person, tall, thin, standing perfectly still between the stalks, just watching us. I blinked, and it was gone, swallowed back into darkness. I wasn't sure if I'd imagined it until I saw Justin's younger cousin standing nearby, frozen, holding a half-burned sparkler. He looked pale. He turned to me and said, "Did you see that guy?" I nodded slowly. "Yeah." I whispered, "I saw it." We didn't want to scare the adults. Figure it might be a prank or a neighbor messing around. So I pulled Justin aside and told him what we saw. He laughed at first, but when I mentioned his cousin saw it too, he stopped smiling. We both stared into the corn for a while, but nothing moved. Then, about 10 minutes later, another mortar went up. Again, that moment of daylight. And again, the figure. This time closer. Same posture. Same stillness. That's when I finally spoke up. I told Justin's uncle. Now, his uncle isn't the jumpy type. He's the kind of guy who's lived on that land for over 20 years. Fought in Iraq. Carries a shotgun under the seat of his truck. Real calm under pressure type. But when I told him what we'd seen, and told him this was the second time, his whole demeanor changed. Without a word, he stood up and told everyone the show was over. Time to head back to the house. Some people groaned, but he was firm. Insisted, said a storm might be rolling in. He asked me and Justin to hang back with flashlights while he made sure everyone got back safely. So there we were, standing in the dark path alone. Our flashlights barely cut into the black. I kept mine trained on the wall of corn. Every shadow looked like it was moving. My chest felt tight. Then we heard it, a soft rustling. But not from the wind. There was no wind. This was something moving through the stalks. Fast, deliberate. Justin whispered, "There." I swung my light toward the sound and caught a glimpse, just enough to see corn stalks bending. Something was running through them, circling us. That was enough. I yelled for his uncle and we took off up the path, tripping over each other to get back to the house. My flashlight bounced wildly. The Bluetooth speaker was still playing somewhere in the distance. That made it worse. The cheerful music clashing with the rising panic. When we burst out into the yard, his uncle was already waiting at the back door, shotgun in hand. He ushered us inside and locked the door behind us. We didn't sleep that night. None of us. The adults acted like it was nothing, told the kids they just had too much sugar, but I knew better, so did Justin. The next morning, his uncle went out to check the field. And here's the thing. On the far side of the clearing, he found a path cut through the corn. Clean, as if something had been standing there just beyond the line of sight, and then walked away when the lights came on. But here's the part that still messes with me. There were no footprints. The dirt was soft. It had rained a few days earlier. You'd expect at least something, a shoe print, a drag mark, but there was nothing, just flattened stalks and that cut path. Whatever was out there, it wasn't just watching us. It was getting closer, and it was smart enough to hide. Ever since then, I've never gone back out to a cornfield on the 4th of July. Every year, I make up an excuse to stay home. I tell people it's the crowds or the noise. But the truth? I'm afraid of what's still out there, waiting in the dark. If you're still with me this far, hit that like button and subscribe for more true horror stories like this. And drop a comment down below. What do you think that thing was? Up next is story 2. And let's just say it involved a roadside accident, a man in uniform, and a chilling realization too late. And remember, some things come out when the sky goes dark. Especially on nights we're too busy looking up at the fireworks to notice what's staring back from the corn. This happened in 2018 on the night of July 4th. I was driving home from my sister's place in Pennsylvania, just across the state line from where I live in Ohio. She had hosted a backyard cookout, your typical small-town 4th of July celebration. Hot dogs, sparklers, cold beers, a few kids running around with glow sticks, and those illegal fireworks someone always smuggles in from another state. It was nice, peaceful, the kind of gathering that makes you forget how heavy the world can feel sometimes. I left around 11 p.m. I had work early the next day and didn't want to crash on her couch with her 2 toddlers waking up at 6 a.m. and bouncing off the walls. The drive home was just over 2 hours, nothing I hadn't done before. Most of it was spent cruising along quiet highways, surrounded by farmland and long-abandoned industrial towns. No traffic, no lights, just the occasional firework popping off in the distance, fading into the rear view. There's one particular stretch of that drive that always got to me, even in the daytime. An old concrete overpass that stretches high above a set of train tracks in dense woods. No lights, no houses nearby, just a lonely piece of road that seems to float in the middle of nowhere. The kind of place where your headlights feel like the only thing keeping the dark from swallowing you whole. That night, I was maybe halfway across the overpass when I noticed flashing red and blue lights up ahead. I immediately slowed down, assuming it was a routine traffic stop, or maybe a random checkpoint. I didn't think much of it at first. The 4th of July is a big night for accidents and DUIs, so it made sense. But as I got closer, I realized something wasn't right. There was no police car, just a man standing in the middle of the road, wearing a dark blue uniform and holding a flashlight. He raised his hand and motioned for me to stop. I rolled down my window partway and stopped about 15 feet from him. He didn't approach the car right away, just stood there in my high beams, still as a statue, the beam from his flashlight cutting a weak circle in the dark. There was something off about him. First of all, he wasn't wearing a reflective vest, which every officer on roadside duty is supposed to wear. Second, his badge. At first glance, it looked normal, but when I squinted, I noticed the numbers were smudged. like someone had tried to redraw them with a Sharpie. No department name, no last name on the uniform, just a plain navy shirt with a patch and a suspiciously blank badge. He finally stepped a little closer and spoke. His voice was calm, almost too calm. He said, "I need you to pull over and turn the engine off. There's been an incident up ahead. Routine safety compliance check." That phrasing stuck with me. Safety compliance check. Not license and registration. Not a sobriety test. It felt like something out of script. Rehearsed. Off. I kept one hand on the wheel and the other hovering near the gear shift. I asked him what department he was with. He replied, "Highway Safety Task Division." I'd never heard of that in my life. I glanced past him into the darkness ahead. No flares. No other vehicles. No sign of an accident or a real stop. Just this man, alone, in the middle of nowhere. And then he said something that chilled me to my core. "There's been a carjacking nearby. We're asking all solo drivers to step out so we can confirm you're not under duress." Now, in theory, that kind of makes sense. But the way he said it, flat, emotionless, almost bored, it didn't match the seriousness of the situation. No urgency. No concern, just a soft, robotic tone. I told him I wasn't comfortable stepping out of my vehicle without a marked squad car present. I said I was happy to wait for backup. He just smiled, not a friendly smile, not even a threatening one, just a small, tight-lipped grin that didn't reach his eyes. He stepped back from the window, like he was about to let me pass. Then he walked slowly toward the guardrail and turned his back to me. Something about the whole thing felt wrong. My instincts were screaming at me, so I hit the gas. I didn't even hesitate. I floored it past him and didn't look back. My heart was pounding so loud I could barely hear the engine. I half expected him to jump out in front of me or give chase, but nothing happened. I didn't stop until I pulled into a Wawa gas station about 15 miles up the road, parked under the lights, locked the doors, sat there trying to breathe. My hand was shaking. I grabbed my phone and called the non-emergency police line for the county I'd just passed through. The woman on the other end was polite, asked me to repeat the name of the department he gave. When I said Highway Safety Task Division, there was a long pause. She said, "We don't have any officers with that department. I'm going to transfer you to a supervisor." I ended up speaking to someone who took my report more seriously. I gave a basic description: white male, late 40s, dark hair, average height and build, wearing a Navy uniform with no visible name. They promised to send someone to check the area. Before hanging up, I asked again, just to be sure, "Are you positive that department doesn't exist?" The supervisor said, "Sir, I've worked this region for 12 years. There's no such division under any jurisdiction in this state." That's when it hit me. Whatever that man was trying to do, it wasn't official. I don't know if it was a robbery attempt, a kidnapping setup, or something worse. But it wasn't the first time that stretch of road had seen something like this. I did some research later out of curiosity and found 2 separate reports from the last decade involving similar encounters on or near that same overpass. Both involved solo drivers. Both involved someone impersonating an officer. No arrests, no suspects, just unexplained disappearances and close calls. If I'd gotten out of that car, I don't know what would have happened. Maybe I wouldn't be here telling this story. So if you're ever driving alone and someone tries to pull you over without a marked car, no visible radio, and a fake-looking badge, trust your gut, because mine might have saved my life that night. And if you're still watching, don't forget to like and subscribe. It helps the channel a lot more than you think, and it lets me know you want more stories like this. Story 3 is coming up next, and it takes place at a lakefront house in a small town where a 4th of July tradition spirals into something truly horrifying. And as always, stay safe out there, especially at night. This happened in 2021 during the 4th of July weekend. My girlfriend at the time, Katie, had invited me to her family's lake house up in Maine. It was part of their annual tradition. They'd go up every summer to celebrate the 4th with cookouts, bonfires, fireworks, and a few lazy days out on the water. I'd never been before, but Katie always talked about how peaceful and beautiful it was. So I took time off work, packed a bag, and made the 6-hour drive with her up north. The moment we pulled in, I got it. The place was gorgeous. The house sat at the edge of a quiet lake, surrounded by dense trees that stretched as far as the eye could see. There were only about 5 or 6 other houses along the shoreline, all spaced far apart, and mostly hidden behind patches of pine and birch. No streetlights, no traffic, just the occasional call of the loon and the rustling of leaves in the breeze. It was a kind of stillness that creeps up on you, the good kind, the kind that reminds you how loud life usually is. Katie's parents were welcoming and friendly. Her younger brother and a couple of cousins were already there when we arrived. Over the first 2 days, we fell into an easy rhythm, grilling during the day, board games at night, drinks around the fire pit. Katie and I even took a canoe out to the far side of the lake and just drifted in the silence for a while. I hadn't felt that disconnected from the real world in years. Then came the 4th. Around 9 p.m., everyone headed down to the dock with folding chairs, blankets, and a cooler full of drinks. The weather was perfect. Clear skies, just a hint of a breeze, and the lake was so still it looked like black glass. You could see the soft glow of lights from the other homes across the water. Most of them had people out too, little gatherings just like ours, setting off fireworks, laughing, kids running around with sparklers, except for one house. It sat directly across from us, maybe 300 yards away, tucked back slightly into the trees. It looked older, darker than the others. The porch light was on, but it flickered unevenly, like an old bulb hanging on by a thread. There was a faint orange glow, maybe from a lantern or fire pit, but I couldn't tell for sure. And there was someone sitting out on the dock, alone. I only noticed because, unlike the other groups, this person wasn't doing anything. They weren't setting off fireworks or holding a drink. They weren't even moving. They just sat there, perfectly still, back straight, like a statue, watching the lake, watching us. At first, I didn't think much of it. Maybe it was just some loner who didn't feel like celebrating. I pointed it out to Katie, mostly as a joke. She gave it a glance and shrugged. Some people are just antisocial, she said. I let it go, sort of. Around 9:30, the fireworks really picked up. Someone across the lake had clearly gone all out, lighting up the sky with huge bursts of green, gold, red. It echoed off the water like distant thunder. Everyone was cheering, clapping. For a while, I forgot about the person on the dock entirely. If you've made it this far and the story's already giving you chills, do me a favor, hit that like button and subscribe. There's a lot more where this came from. So, like I said, the night was perfect until it wasn't. It was close to 10:30 when things started to get strange again. Most of our group had gone back inside by then, tired or tipsy. I decided to stay out for a bit longer and took a phone call from a buddy who texted me earlier. I didn't want to wake anyone, so I walked down to the end of the dock. The water was completely still, and the echoes of distant fireworks were still bouncing around the tree-line. That's when I looked across the lake and noticed something that made the hairs on my arm stand up. The person on the other dock, the one I'd seen sitting earlier, was standing now, still perfectly still, but standing, and they were facing directly toward me, not toward the lake, not at the fireworks. Me, and behind them, there was a second figure. I swear they hadn't been there before. There was no sound, no motion, no hint that someone else had joined them. But there they were, tall, still, standing just behind the first person like they'd stepped out of the shadows. The second figure was just as rigid, no movement, just watching. I remember saying to my friend on the phone, half joking, I think someone's staring at me across the lake. He laughed, said maybe they thought I was cute. I tried to laugh along, but my chest was tight. I couldn't stop staring. Something about the way they stood, the posture, the stillness. It felt off, unnatural, and then the first person raised something, a long, narrow object. I thought maybe it was a cane or a flagpole or something harmless, but then they lit the end of it, a Roman candle. They aimed it upward, and a single red burst arced into sky. Then they lit another, this one angled lower, toward the lake. The third one, It was aimed directly into the water, halfway between our docks. At that point, I ended the call and speed walked back to the house. My skin was crawling. I didn't want to cause a scene, so I told Katie there were still people across the lake partying a little too hard. But when I looked out the window a few minutes later, they were still there, standing, watching, even after the fireworks had stopped. If this story is starting to feel familiar, like something you've heard around a campfire or a late-night drive, you'll want to stay tuned. Don't forget to subscribe and drop a comment if you've ever seen something you couldn't explain. Now, back to the story. The next morning, I woke up early and stepped outside, hoping to catch a look at the house in the daylight. Something about it was still bugging me, so I scanned the far shoreline and froze. There was no house. There was a foundation, yeah, stone steps broken down, overgrown weeds where a lawn might have been, and what was left of an old, warped dock stretching just a few feet into the lake. But the house? Gone, like it had been gone for years. I asked Katie's dad about it over breakfast. He sipped his coffee and said, "Oh yeah, that place burned down years ago. 15, maybe 20. Family never came back to rebuild." I asked if anyone ever camped out there. He just shook his head. No one goes near it. Locals say it's bad luck. Bad luck. I never told anyone what I saw that night, because I still don't know how to explain it. Whether it was some prank, some illusion, or something worse. I know what I saw. 2 people, standing in the dark, watching me. So if you ever find yourself by a lake on a quiet night, watching fireworks, and you spot a figure across the water who never moves, maybe don't wave. Maybe don't wait around to see if they wave back. Because not everything out there is part of the celebration. And if the story disturbed you as much as it did me reliving it, hit that like button, subscribe, and make sure notifications are on so you don't miss the next story. Trust me, you're going to want to hear what happens in the next one, because some traditions should stay buried.